The right side of my hair always dries curlier than the left. And now that's all you're gonna stare at for the whole video. You're welcome. What's up guys, I am SheNoob and welcome to my review of RWBY Volume 3 Chapter 8, Destiny. Yes, I know how far behind the reviews are. I'm trying to catch up. Also, just before I get started, I wanted to quickly ask you something. I'm thinking about filming my reaction to the RWBY Volume 3 finale. Is that something you guys would like to see? Let me know. Now let's not waste any time, let's get straight into the episode. The episode opens with General Ironwood in Team RWBY's dorm room, discussing with them the events that have just transpired at the end of the last chapter. It's immediately obvious that he doesn't believe Yang's story, but that RWBY and Weiss are both on Yang's side, which is good. Ironwood proceeds to lecture them about the stresses of battle, and how being on the battlefield can make you see things that simply aren't there. He then proceeds to tell Team RWBY that they've been disqualified from the tournament. Now really, this isn't the worst thing that could have happened to them in this situation, so counting our blessings. RWBY and Weiss believe Yang's story, but Blake is a little more skeptical. I'm very surprised at Blake. How could she not trust her teammate? Why would Yang make this up? I was hurt for Yang when Blake said she wanted to believe her. I actually teared up when Yang did. Blake then proceeds to explain that she sees similarities in this situation to Adam, and the way he slowly descended into becoming a monster. But Yang is not Adam. I don't understand how Blake could be so cold towards Yang. She keeps comparing everything around her to her past, and it's simply not the same situation. Plus, we also know that Yang is telling the truth. How many times does this poor girl need to explain what she saw before anybody believes her? This entire situation is completely unfair and I really feel for Yang. She does convince Blake to trust her, and then the rest of Team RWBY leave Yang to rest. Team Juniper are obviously concerned, and RWBY tells Pyrrha to win one for Beacon. Poor Pyrrha. She's so distracted. She has much bigger things on her mind right now than winning the tournament. Did anyone else find that Weiss saying ditto in this scene was really weird?
Ditto.
Like, I wouldn't think Weiss to say ditto. It just sounded wrong coming out of her mouth. Nora then tries to give Pyrrha some friendly motivation. Nora is always a riot whenever she has scenes in the show. And Ren tries to help by making Pyrrha some sort of nutritious drink that, as Nora says,
that looks like slime from a lake bed.
Ren has a lot of lines this volume. It's very out of character. I get that they're trying to give him more screen time, but Ren's always seemed like the silent type. The type that only really speaks when it's necessary to. And it seems like Neith Ohm is still settling into his role. However, the two of them actually manage to make Pyrrha smile. Jean can obviously tell how distracted and upset Pyrrha is over something, so he comes to the rescue and suggests they all go outside for some air. He's becoming much more observant. Then we go back to Yang in her dorm room and Crow comes in. He calls her Firecracker. That's kind of cute. But then it's immediately obvious that he doesn't believe her either. You would think that with all the things these people have seen, they would find it a little less absurd that Yang saw something that the rest of them didn't. I'm ashamed at these people, seriously. Yang then tells Crow that she saw her mother. I was actually surprised that Crow came right out and said, yep, that was your mum, her name's Raven. He also says to Yang that he doesn't see his sister often. And that clicks with Yang that means that Crow talks to Raven and he's never said anything to her about it. She then says that was real.
You talked to her? That was real?
I'm going to assume she's talking about that conversation she had with Raven after the credits in Volume 2. Crow then says that Raven wanted to give Yang a message, and the message was that she saved her once and she shouldn't expect that kindness again. This is her own daughter she's talking to. Crow says that Raven has an interesting way of looking at the world and she's a very dangerous person. Obviously him and his sister aren't on the greatest of terms. She sounds kind of selfish to me, to be honest. He then says he might have an idea of where Raven might be and he can help Yang track her down. Somehow I don't think Raven is going to be remotely close to what Yang expected. She seems like the kind of person that's just looking out for herself. Also, I'm a little suspicious about Raven's true nature. Corey brought up a good point to me about back in chapter 7, when Cinder stole the Four Maidens' power. The little bug that came out of her glove, there was sort of a red and black sort of portal behind it. And then underneath the 4 characters as the transfer is taking place, there's that same red and black portal. And those portals bear a striking resemblance to the one Raven made when she saved Yang from Neo. I'm not saying Raven's in league with Cinder, but it can't be a coincidence. I'm not so sure Yang should track her down. Then we cut to Pyrrha sitting by herself outside the cafeteria. And Jean comes up to her with a wad of fairy floss. Cotton candy, whatever, we call it fairy floss here. He sits down next to her and tells her that she was the first person to ever believe in him. And he obviously wants to help her the way that she helped him when he arrived at Beacon. Pyrrha's startled when Jean puts his hand on hers. And the Arca ship has sailed, right before it's doomed to crash on the rocks. I really wish Jean and Pyrrha could have had more time to just be them. Pyrrha asks Jean if he believes in destiny. She explains that she believes her destiny was to be a huntress, but the full maiden thing has thrown a spanner in her works and now she doesn't know what to do. She obviously wants to do the right thing, but it's an enormous sacrifice for her. She's sacrificing her dreams and everything she's worked towards her whole life. She could even be sacrificing who she is. They don't know what the transfer of Amber's aura will do to Pyrrha. She could come out being something that she's not, being someone that she's not. If I was in her position, I wouldn't know what to do either. And poor Jean is completely in the dark. He doesn't know what's wrong or how to help her. I wish she would have just confided it all in him. I wish she would have trusted him with the truth. Because he just doesn't know what to say. And hearing him tell her not to let anything stand in her way makes her even more upset. Because he doesn't even know what she's facing, and yet she knows that he's right. Out of emotion, Pyrrha uses her semblance against Jean and sends him smacking against the pillar by accident. Pyrrha crying hurt my heart. True sadness is not something we've seen in this show before, especially not tears, and there's been many tears in this episode. Our beloved characters are crumbling on the floor in a heap. They're in way over their heads. Then we move to something a little more cheerful. Velvet is practicing her photography on Sun Wukong, and she is a terrible photographer. I love RWBY's little, "That's better!"
That's better.
I wonder if Velvet's camera has anything to do with her weapon since it goes in that box. And as some of you might remember from the Volume 2 behind the scenes, Monty said that he was going to try and fit Velvet's weapon into this box. I'm just wondering what kind of weapon she could have as a mage character that could have anything to do with a camera. Mind you, we've seen a trumpet, so anything's really possible. Also, a lot of people are still wondering when the heck we're gonna get to see Velvet's weapon. Well, I have it on good authority that Katie, Velvet's voice actress, has said she's had to record efforts for the show. If you don't know what efforts are, they're all the little grunts and groans that voice actors have to record for fighting sequences, basically. So obviously Velvet's gonna see some action. Hopefully we get to see her weapon finally, after we were promised it last volume. Velvet then lets slip to RWBY about the fact that Coco had a hallucination during her fight against Emerald and Mercury. As we all remember, she saw Yatsuhashi walking through the forest, but he in fact wasn't there. And after hearing this, RWBY's already starting to figure it out, or at least she's suspicious. We then go back to the Colosseum for the next fight of the singles round. RWBY sits down and then she spies an Emerald across the other side of the Colosseum. Now she's really suspicious. She gets up out of her seat and goes into a maintenance hallway to try and get to the other side quickly. Obviously she intends to go talk to Emerald and find out what the heck is going on. But before she gets there, she runs into Mercury, who blocks her path, standing on 2 legs. I thought he was supposed to be laying low. I guess he would have been in there to make sure nobody tried to disturb Emerald. While they're having a stare down, we hear that the next fight is going to be Penny versus Pyrrha. Now we all knew this was going to be coming. As soon as Cinder realised that Penny was an android, I knew she was going to pit her against Pyrrha, and RWBY has this all figured out now. And once again, she's alone with an enemy and she's been caught without her weapon. Just about every other time we've seen these characters just roaming around Beacon, they have had their weapons on them. It's a combat academy. Where is your scythe, RWBY? Without Crescent Rose, I don't know how the hell she is gonna best Mercury. Her best chance would be to just run away, but I don't know if he'd let her go. So 2 things waiting to unravel themselves next episode. How is RWBY gonna get away from Mercury? And Penny is totally screwed. It's gonna be a bad one. Also, I want to talk a little bit about Volume 3's soundtrack. I was doing some research trying to figure out what sort of time frame we can expect this volume's soundtrack in. Breach, the last chapter of Volume 2, was released on October 30th, 2014. And then the Volume 2 soundtrack was released December 2nd. So it was a little over a month in between the end of the volume and the soundtrack's release. Now granted, Jeff Williams has had more time than usual this year to work on the soundtrack, but because of that he's also made more songs than he normally does. So I think a month is again a reasonable expectation. The last episode of Volume 3 is going to be released on February 14th, Valentine's Day. So going by the month timeline of last volume, we can expect Volume 3's soundtrack sometime in March. Hopefully not any later. So at least that gives us some sort of time frame to look at. And for now, we'll just have to keep hoping that we hear something from Jeff soon. Also, speaking of Jeff Williams, he recently just released his new app called 8 Tracks. This app's been in development for quite some time, and I've known about it since early last year. Basically, it's an app that allows you to separate the parts of RWBY songs. So you can play just the drums, just the vocals, you can play the guitar, drums and vocals, whatever. Basically, it's meant for people who transcribe the songs by ear. And it's also meant for making instrumentals for covers. Now, I really want to make some official instrumentals with this app, but the problem is, it's not available on Android yet. And I don't own any iPhones or anything because I hate Apple products. So until it comes out on Google Play, I'm not going to be able to use it, unfortunately. But I'll let you guys know via my social media when I have it. And then after that, you can expect official instrumentals for the RWBY soundtrack. And this has been my review of RWBY Volume 3 Chapter 8. I hope you enjoyed as always. If you did, please don't forget to like the video and leave a comment. There's some videos below me now if you're interested in seeing more of my content. Follow me on my social media if you like. And please don't forget to click that big red subscribe button up there. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you guys, and I will see you for Chapter 9. Bye!